Good morning. It's sure good to see all of you here today, and thank you, Ellie, again for the warm welcome to me and my family and the rest of you. It's so good to be with you today. I'm thankful to not only have my wife Trila and daughter Laura, and Laura's service dog Solo is here, by the way. She's under the table. She sort of hides under there, but she's a beautiful service dog. And also Trila's mother, our mother-in-law, Helen Van Boy, who lives here in Shreveport. So it's good to have family here and to be family. And I really do feel like I'm family with you all here. My connection goes back to 1971 when our family left South Louisiana and moved to Shreveport. I was the minister's son growing up here 5 years, all the way through high school, and then gone for 8 years, and then came back to be the associate minister here from 1984 to 1989. And they were wonderful years. Just always have loved this church, and you all mean so much to me. Our courses have sort of paralleled ours being Kings Highway Christian Church, and the church that I pastored for almost 20 years until just several weeks ago when I moved on to a new ministry, Park Hill Christian Church in North Little Rock, Arkansas. In that parallel course, you all built this beautiful Family Life Center. And I'm not sure the history of the contemporary service had already been going on, or if the contemporary service started after you built this facility, but we paralleled you all in building a new Family Life Center and beginning a new contemporary service. I will have to be honest with you and tell you that when it was first brought up about the possibility of us starting a contemporary worship service, I really didn't want to hear anything about the possibility. It was so foreign to me, and I was afraid of what it might be like. And fortunately, I began to listen, and we began to explore that. And I can honestly say that the contemporary worship service at Park Hill Christian Church is one of the best things that we have done there. We have received a lot of growth in our church from it. And I'm thankful that we have that service, and I'm thankful that you all have this service as well. And thanks to the praise band. Do you all call yourselves the praise band? Whatever, our church doesn't have a name either. But thank you all for the music, and it's exciting to see nephew Russell on the drums. And y'all are thrilled to have Russell and the others. Our son David, he's 23, plays guitar in the contemporary worship service praise band at our church. And it makes me funny to say that because David wasn't even born when we left here to move to Arkansas, and it's hard to believe that he'll be 24 in October. But we love this church very, very much, and I'm grateful to your senior minister, Dr. David Bryce, my brother-in-law, for extending the invitation to me to join you in worship today. And then you'll get to see my dad next Sunday, so I hope you'll be able to be here for that. I'd like to ask you to join me in prayer now, please. Eternal God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you. O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. In the name of Christ. Amen. Well, I have a minister friend in Central Arkansas who has a group that she corresponds with concerning email. From time to time, she'll raise questions, she'll throw out things and invite people to respond, and that's one of the ways that she prepares for her sermons. And a few weeks ago, there was a particular email that came out from her and a question that came along with it, and I'd like for you to hear word for word what she wrote. I attended a conference recently, and we were told that it's getting more common for church people these days to identify themselves as having more than one religion. In Canada, the forms that citizens fill out in addition to the responses for Catholic or Protestant now include bi-religious and multi-religious. She went on to say that one of the ministers who was there at that conference told a story about a couple who wanted to join their church, but they were not allowed to do so because they do not believe that Jesus is the Christ. They do not believe that Jesus is God's Son. So in this email, my minister friend raised the question, how much are we willing to compromise when it comes to what we believe? I will be very, very direct with you. To be a Christian is to believe that Jesus is the Christ. To be a Christian is to believe that Jesus is indeed God's Son. That is the fundamental belief of Kings Highway Christian Church, and that is the fundamental belief of all of the churches within the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, and it has been that way since our beginning in the early 1800s. Concerning our scripture for today, thank you, Ellie, for reading that so beautifully. Setting, the area of Caesarea Philippi, a city about 20-30 miles north of the Sea of Galilee. Jesus, as you know, was growing in popularity because he'd been out preaching and teaching, healing, casting out demons. Through his disciples, Jesus wanted to know what people were thinking about him. Well, they believe that you're John the Baptist or one of the prophets. In other words, the people did not see Jesus as the Messiah. They did not believe in Jesus as the Christ, the Son of God, but rather saw Jesus as a forerunner, if you will, of the Messiah. Well, as you know, Jesus then raised that same question to his disciples. What about you? Who do you say that I am? And Peter is the one who spoke up. You are the Christ, or the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And Jesus affirmed Peter's response and told Peter that he was to become the leader of the church. I want to remind you that these words, Messiah, which is from the Hebrew, and Christ, which is from the Greek, both mean the same thing. They both mean anointed. In biblical days, when prophets, priests, and kings were chosen, oil was poured over their head as a way of consecrating them to that sacred office, a way of affirming that God had chosen them and had set them apart. Folks, Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah, the Anointed One, the Son of God. Two of the most brilliant ministers, preachers, New Testament scholars in the world are Dr. Fred Craddock and Dr. Eugene Boring, and in their book, they get to the heart of the matter. The book is called The People's New Testament Commentary. I'll read this one statement from them. There have been many prophets, priests, and kings, they say, but to refer to Jesus as the Messiah means that one confesses Jesus to be the definitive spokesperson for God, making him prophet. The one who reconciles humanity to God and mediates the forgiveness of sins, making him priest. And the one designated by God to represent God's own rulership in the kingdom of God, making him king. The disciples believed that Jesus was the Christ, the Anointed One. They were convinced that Jesus was the one who came from God, the one God set apart. Unfortunately, not everyone saw it that way. Many people in Jesus' day were still looking for and waiting for the Anointed One to arrive. I mentioned Dr. Fred Craddock several years ago. I remember listening to a sermon of his, and he made an interesting statement that it's actually easier to believe that the Messiah will come than to believe that the Messiah is already here. Now, why would he say that? Well, if Christ is already here, then we have to accept him as he is. But if we don't believe that Christ is here, then we can still hope and dream and wish all of the things that we would like and want him to be. Our being back here in Shreveport, so I was considering what I might share with you today, brought me back in my mind and heart to my junior year in high school. I went to Byrd. Just before my junior year in high school, I got my schedule. And I saw American history on my schedule. I was very, very much looking forward to taking American history. I've always enjoyed history. And I had what looked to be on that card on my schedule a very challenging academic schedule. And I felt like American history would be an easy class. I thought American history was going to help balance the load to make things a little bit easier for me. Now, there's a reason why I felt that way. I took American history in the 7th grade at John Quincy Adams Middle School back in Metairie. We loved our teacher, Miss Grimes. She was everything that you would want in a teacher. She was young. She was very pretty. She was a lot of fun. She had a great personality. And when she stood in the front of our class with those good looks and that sweet Alabama accent, she had all of us guys just melting in our chairs, just melting. She had our 12-year-old male hormones going crazy, and we all had a big crush on Miss Grimes. Now, as I look back on her class, it was very, very easy. I wouldn't admit it then, I will now. It was too easy. She didn't make us work. We had very little to do, but we had a lot of fun. We all made A's, had a great time. So naturally, when I saw American history on my schedule just before my junior year in high school, I had these hopes and dreams that it was going to be the same kind of class with the same kind of teacher. Did not happen. When I was considering saying this, I thought, I hope our teacher that I'm about to talk about is not here in this church. But really, it ends up being a compliment. Honestly, when I look back to that first day of class, when our teacher, Miss Whitehead, walked in, my happy dream turned into a living nightmare. She came in yelling at us like a Marine drill sergeant. She separated us from our friends. We couldn't talk. We couldn't even smile. We had a tremendous amount of work to do. The class was extremely challenging. It ended up being one of the hardest classes I had. Initially, Miss Whitehead wasn't what I had hoped and dreamed that she would be. But then, after a while, she was. She was one of the best teachers I have ever had. Once she had us right there in the palm of her hand, once she had us disciplined, then she let up. A wonderful personality came out. She was a great teacher, and I learned so much from her. American history really came alive. Again, it was so much easier hoping and dreaming about what she was going to be than it was seeing her and experiencing her face to face that first week or two. I think that was the way it was for many of the people of Jesus' day. Oh, he was there. But as long as they did not accept the fact or recognize that he was the Christ, they could dream and hope and make him, in their hearts and minds, what they wanted him to be. And folks, what they wanted was someone like their great King David. Someone who would lead them to military victory, bringing them national glory, material blessings, free from the Roman rule, creating for them a great and powerful kingdom with Jerusalem as the capital. In their hearts, that's what the Christ, the Messiah, was going to do for them. And then no one would ever again push them around and tell them what to do. They wanted a conquering hero. What they got was God in the flesh. One who loved and served all people, all the way to a cross. So many of the people of that day wanted self-righteous greatness. But he taught them to be servants of God. No wonder they didn't want to recognize Jesus as the Christ. Now, not only is he neglecting our dreams, he then goes and dies on a cross. What's a dead man going to do for us? If we had been in charge, maybe things would have been a little different. Maybe we wouldn't have seen the need for Christ to go to the cross. Instead, let's just have all the sinful people pay for what they've done, and then Jesus would just hang out with the rest of us, those who really believe in him and who he is and what he stands for, those of us who really want to follow him. It's not a bad thought, I guess, until you really stop and think it through. Because, folks, if all of the sinful people were taken care of in the way they deserve, who would be left to live in fellowship with Christ? No one. Not a single one of us. When I look at the list of those who deserve to be punished for sin, I saw my name on it. I saw everyone's name. People didn't understand at the time, but it was necessary for Christ to go to the cross. And Jesus then did not what people wanted, but what all of us needed. And because of that, we're promised abundant life in the here and now, and we're promised a place in God's eternal kingdom. But first, there is that question that each one of us needs to answer. The same question Jesus asked his disciples. Who do you say that I am? It's a deeply personal question. I cannot answer for you, and you can't answer for me. But I'll give you a little warning. If you say you are the Christ, you are the Son of the living God, you need to back your words by committing to a specific way of life, because you're no longer living for yourself. You're living for God. You're living for others. And then for yourself. You are committing to the very way of life that Jesus lived and taught, rather than doing whatever you want to do. It's not much greater than the challenges and the cost. So my minister friend in Arkansas wanted to know how much it is that we're willing to compromise when it comes to what we believe. I'll put it like this. If we ever disbelieve that Jesus is the Christ, if we ever disbelieve that Jesus is God's Son, then the church will no longer be the church that Christ called into being. And we will no longer be able to claim the name Christian. Who do you say that I am? Our collective answers define who we are as a church. Perhaps more important than that, your personal answer defines who you are and how you live your life, both now and through eternity.